A letter from F. Loosely attached to notebook number 4. B. I know it's been like 5 years. And I know it's inexcusable for me to not have been in touch since. I reached out to E and K sometimes. I've heard through them that you're all doing fine. I know that A has settled into the life he was always meant to live, and everyone else was scattered to the winds. I think that's how it was always meant to be. We couldn't have stayed in the city. To me, at least, it was always a disappointment. The people who seemed so fascinating in our university years eventually settled for a 6th-floor apartment and an ad agency job, didn't they? Everyone got off on the last stop, with no warning. It's too small a town to live freely in. Those who didn't settle had flaws so deep that they were prevented from catching even the last train to normalcy, or, they stayed behind out of a misguided sense of pride, resigned to a dark and bitter life. You'll notice that the former are always pining for a partner to forgive all their shortcomings, while the latter are always looking to leave. As for me, I wouldn't say I've been happier since I left town, but I would say I've felt imbued with a greater sense of purpose. Even if I'm not sure what that purpose is. Maybe it's just been all the traveling that's kept me busy. Colonial little islands on the Caribbean, sun-baked towns in North Africa, a season in Manchester as well. I leap at the first employment opportunity that comes with a plane ticket attached. You should see my resume, you couldn't make heads or tails of it. But something always comes up eventually. I'm not naive enough to think that this has nothing to do with the influence of my father, always there, even when it's not. But I'm done carrying that cross. Instead I'm teaching, learning, shooting, editing, sleeping on friends' couches and middle-of-nowhere motels. I hope you get to experience this at some point too. I never understood why you chose to stay behind, of all people. I know you don't like to talk about money, but I'm sure you would have been able to leave if you wanted to. I understand he's like a fish in water over there. Why would he leave? I'll always be fond of him, but he's not like us in that sense. You, though, had the most reasons and the best credentials. But you always brushed aside all inquiries, and I think most of the group assumed that you were having family issues, or something of the sort. But I have to be honest with you, I knew it wasn't that. Ever since you told me about your father, the clan, and the rest, it was easy to put it all together. I want you to know that you're not bound to that city forever. I worry about you because you seem to think otherwise. The underground galleries, the secret bars, the abandoned housing complexes and anonymous hallways. It doesn't have to be your life. Please, if you need help just tell me. I was so ambivalent about reaching out for years, and today I regret it. I should have sent this letter long ago, but now it's in your hands. Don't let it consume you. You can still do it differently. Call me. F. It wasn't so much that Tomasa and Giovanna's questions were prodding or intrusive, but rather that I didn't know how much I was supposed to divulge. The balmy afternoon and the little garden tea set were working their magic on me, but I was still sharply aware of how bizarre the situation was. And, I have to admit, part of me was also embarrassed. What would my coworkers think if they knew what I was doing with my Friday? It's funny how I'd spent the last few months convincing myself I was above them, and had no interest in their opinions, but now they were coming back to haunt me. I'm not like B. I can't spend my life having little urban adventures with aging barkeeps, lonesome street sweepers, and cryptic record collectors. I do have a reputation to uphold. I allowed myself to listen to the nuns chatter instead, remaining at the margins of their conversation, but maintaining a friendly disposition. Tomasa was once again reminiscing about her childhood in a northern fishing village, where summers were endless and people lived in a state of what F would probably call honest poverty. Tomasa's way of telling stories was lyrical, prone to tangents which seemed to delight even her. It seemed like she never knew where exactly her anecdotes would take her, and the result was always as much of a surprise for the narrator as it was for the audience. Giovanna listened with feigned interest, a kind of strained, political smile which locked her sharp features in place. Tomasa's aimless reminiscing reached its natural conclusion and a pleasant silence fell upon the three of us. It had probably been 45 or so minutes since we began talking. She was wary of monopolizing the conversation, even though Giovanna had made no attempt to interrupt, and I was wholly someplace else. Her narration was almost therapeutic. But Giovanna's manners were stronger and she turned to me with an open gesture. She wanted to know about my day, my job and career. My world was a bit mysterious to them. I suppose they imagined I was rubbing shoulders with titans of finance, and closing million-dollar deals on a daily basis. Important people in high-rise buildings overlooking the skyline. To them, whose sensory life had been reduced to the convent and whatever existed in a 2-mile radius around it, there must have been some frisson to it. If only they knew how dire things really were. I didn't want to talk about my life, and I wouldn't have known how to do so if prompted. I tried changing the subject back to them. I thought perhaps we had now grown close enough for me to feel warranted in asking more personal questions. After a bit of generic fluff about what it was like to work in an important law firm, I don't think they were aware that a temp does nothing but data entry and espressos. I tried asking Giovanna what drove her to becoming a nun. To this she screwed up her face for just a second. I did see it. But then it resettled into a polite, dense smile. She looked above me, presumably at the sun setting behind the wall, and seemed genuinely lost in thought. Tomasa was looking at her. I noticed from the corner of her eye with a certain anticipation. In so many words, Giovanna lived in a small southern town. Dry, quiet, and mostly populated by the elderly. Her mother was a teacher, while her father occupied a certain position in the regional government. It was understood that Giovanna's family had a certain local cachet, which commanded respect for their forebears. She didn't say that, though, I intuited it. And her hometown was notable for one thing only, a beautiful, colonial cathedral which had become a regional tourist attraction, where she had attended mass since early childhood. All social functions of the town were, as is common, tied in some way to the parish. It was where carnivals, funerals, fundraisers, baptisms, and weddings were organized. Elegant traditional construction, lacquered pews, a robust silver goblet for communion. Stained glass windows dating back to the viceroyalty. This was the most excited I ever saw Giovanna, as she entered a kind of trance state where she seemed to access a perfect reconstruction of the cathedral which existed in her mind. She described fussy details with remarkable ease, the wainscoting, the minor characters of the oil paintings in the priest's quarters, the number of candles usually lit on the devotional altar. And Tomasa listened on in similar rapture, not looking directly at Giovanna but rather at me, as if Giovanna herself were too much to bear in this precise moment. Needless to say, the cathedral had a profound impact on Giovanna as a child and adolescent. It seemed to have been etched into her mind, every stone block an artisanal flourish, forever. And she spoke of it with such obsessive adoration that at a certain point I almost felt obliged to interrupt, not because I wasn't enjoying this, but because I was beginning to wonder if she would get to the point of the story before sundown. Giovanna eventually caught on to this, and her face settled into her usual expression, as if she were slowly but surely coming down from her ecstasy. Then she fixed her eyes on mine and simply said this: that cathedral burned down one day, when she was still young. It burned down completely to the ground, and while there were no casualties, thank God, the loss was immense for the town. Things were never the same, and Giovanna had to leave.
And I became a nun because I wanted to rebuild that cathedral in my heart,
Giovanna said plainly. Tomasa looked, honestly, like this was the first time she heard this story in its entirety. Roughly 10 years ago, remember we'd all go to Salvage Beach during the summer? It was really popular, you could rent out a place for cheap, we'd spend the summer months getting tan to a crisp without a care in the world and so on. It was roughly 2 hours away from town down the main highway. Anyway, I'm asking because, do you remember ever seeing a burned down husk of a church in the distance? Because I clearly remember it. It's been stuck to my head since I saw it, probably at age 10 or so. The sun was setting and I looked at this broken skeleton of a building against the sky, which was on fire. There were people moving about, but for the most part it seemed abandoned. I suppose it could have been a building in construction, but for some reason I always knew it was a church, and that it burned down. Do you remember that? Am I going crazy? The next time I ran into Tomasa and Giovanna, they were standing in exactly the same place as always, at the bottom level of the abandoned mall, on a sunbeam. This had never struck me as weird until that moment. Why were they willingly placing themselves under the sun, in the heat of summer? In those clothes? I remember the reason why it seemed so strange to me then was because they hadn't seen me approaching, and, as I walked towards them to say hi, I noticed that they were both staring upwards, directly at the sun's rays, as if trying to discern something in it from the depths of that condemned building. My relationship with the nuns reached its natural conclusion in the days afterwards. We still regarded each other warmly, but my days at the firm were coming to an end, and I had no reason to ever approach them all again. I had to find work elsewhere and get my grades up, and so on. But I did visit them once more, totally out of the blue, months after this entire ordeal. I remember I had stopped at a nearby convenience store for cigarettes. I don't remember why I was in that part of town. It was the weekend and I caught the convent out of the corner of my eye. And I thought, I should see them, once more. I felt a pang of guilt for the way in which our rapport completely vanished after that summer, even if it was inevitable for it to do so. It was just my luck that, at that precise moment, Tomasa was running the front desk. They were selling chocolate truffles, as always. To be honest, Dottie, she didn't seem thrilled to see me. There was a dire change in her behavior, or maybe just in her openness towards me. First of all, her mouth froze into what seemed like it was going to be a scream for help when I walked through the door. She quickly regained composure and adopted a polite coldness which was not unlike the way Giovanna treated everyone. I tried making chipper small talk with her, but she didn't bite. She talked fast and low, like our meeting was in some way illicit, like she couldn't wait to be done with this and never see me again. To this day I don't really understand. Were they reprimanded for letting me into the building on that day? For shirking their duties? Did they feel silly for revealing so much of themselves to a stranger? Did they feel resentful and abandoned? I guess those are all possibilities. I guess nuns are mysterious creatures after all. I did ask her about Giovanna, and she said she was just beyond the heavy doors, wiping the halls which led to the nuns' quarters. I guess I was way out of bounds here, but at the time I didn't give it a second thought. I had every intention of saying hello, and so I walked past Tomasa and swung an heavy door open, peering into the tiled halls which led beyond the front desk and into a bowels of the convent, where visitors were not allowed. I didn't even intend to walk in. I just wanted to see her, and wave, and that would be that. And maybe I would have bought some chocolates as a sign of goodwill. Anyway, there wasn't anyone wiping the floors, though I did see a bucket of water set down, as if someone had abandoned this work part way through. Was Giovanna avoiding me? Had she been listening to our conversation? I couldn't find out because Tomasa immediately seized me by the arm with intention to cause pain, and I was bewildered, stepping back instantly and letting the door swing back on its hinges, almost hitting me in the face. I was being reprimanded at Mach speed by Tomasa, who was saying something about how it was strictly prohibited for visitors to look into the private quarters, and that Giovanna was busy anyway, and then something about nuns' vows, and so on. I was so rattled that I didn't listen. I allowed her to lead me back towards the entrance, hand firmly on my forearm like an exasperated schoolteacher with a petulant child, and with that we said our goodbyes. I was in a daze. I felt so violently rejected that I didn't dare protest or inquire. And that was my story with the nuns. I know you've never been there, Dottie, and I don't recommend visiting. After the other things I've learned from your friends, it's clear that something's going on there. Also, I did a little amateur web searching and I can't find the church that burned down. I imagine there would be at least a few news stories about it, but nothing matches the time frame and location described. But I do remember seeing something like that on drives home from the beach. Do you? Is it possible Giovanna was embellishing the story, and this was some dinky chapel in the middle of nowhere? Or am I connecting dots that don't exist? This happened just last year, though it also relates to things that happened when I was 7, maybe 8 years old. There's a church called Our Lady of Temperance downtown, near the Ochre Towers housing complex. It's not particularly outstanding, although I think it's been around for at least 50 years. The facade is nice enough, but it's clearly fallen into disrepair. I think there were intentions to declare it as cultural heritage, but the funding never materialized. The steps are dirty and frequented by the homeless. There's a little gated garden to the side which houses an altar of the Virgin, and, if you're lucky, a few napping stray cats. My grandma went to mass there, without fail, for the last couple decades of her life. Personally, I'm sure I've been inside the church at least once or twice, as a child, but I don't actually remember much. Looking up images online, there aren't many. Nothing about it seems particularly notable. It's roomy and solemn enough, and there are some nice paintings of Bible scenes in between the stained glass windows. I've been looking at pictures in an attempt to recall any memories of the church I may have, but it hasn't worked so far. I guess I could just go there, but I think I'm going to need some time before I feel up to the task. Anyway, back in October or so last year I was an intern for a friend's dad's textile company, doing some of the data entry and number crunching, nothing special. In fact, it was mind-numbingly boring most of the time. Two saving graces, though, I didn't have to dress formal, and I was unsupervised nearly all day. So naturally there was a lot of time wasted clicking around on the computer, idly chatting with friends. I was crammed into a little storage room, with boxes of dusty files and moth-eaten binders piled up to the ceiling behind me, and the glow of an old PC in front of me. Yellowed papers, ancient receipts, notarized letters, and heaps of stapled photocopies were also stacked in front of me, neatly framing my claustrophobic workstation. A monoblock chair and a company coffee mug were provided. To my right, A dusty window looked out over the industrial park where headquarters were located. My only company were the other administrative employees, all in their 40s or older. So it was definitely a little grim. This was also why I borrowed B's old Game Boy for a couple months, by the way. At the time I was so bored that I'd even refresh news pages throughout the day, since at least they were something to read. The company's IT person wasn't sophisticated enough to block access to any sites, but I was too self-conscious to search for web games or porn on a work computer. In those weeks, LPP had inaugurated a citizen news service, which produced online stories based on text message reports submitted by citizens about the goings-on around town. It was a mess, obviously. Most people used it to complain about neighbors flaunting curbside parking regulations, or failing to pick up their dog's poop, or loitering in public parks. Always a tinge of racism to those complaints, etc. I think it was retired just a few months later. Whatever came through those channels was either inconsequential or impossible to verify. In my days of idle news watching from the depths of that lonesome internship, I did last 8 months there, I stumbled into a citizen news report that immediately caught my attention, because it came from Our Lady of Temperance. I hadn't thought about the church in years by then, but it was etched into my mind as synonymous with my grandma, and my childhood. The contents were alarming. I can't remember the exact wording of the headline, but it was something like, "Mysterious stranger terrifies churchgoers at morning service." Clicking through to the report revealed that it was tagged as a developing story. There were precious few details. The body was about as long as the headline. It went something like, multiple reports have surfaced of a mysterious figure in black whose presence has alarmed churchgoers at Our Lady of Temperance morning service. This was happening as I sat in the chair, some 10 kilometers away from me, on an October morning. I thought about calling Grandma to make sure she was alright. She was always present at morning mass before I remembered that, like most people her age, she didn't have, or know how to use, a cell phone. I thought about calling my mom to alert her of the situation, but that felt like a step too far. Did I really want to worry her over what could very easily be a hoax, or a silly misunderstanding? What could a mysterious figure in black be doing in a church, anyway? That hardly sounded like a robbery or a hostage situation. Who robs a church? In fact, it almost sounded like what you guys enjoy calling weird shit, and that wasn't lost on me at the time. So I didn't do anything for the moment. I sat on the edge of my seat and refreshed the page obsessively, having completely forgotten my obligations. The first update to the story came approximately 15 minutes later. An addendum to the body text: witnesses report that the figure has not engaged with or threatened churchgoers, and is simply walking about the building interiors. Service has not been interrupted. I'm heavily paraphrasing here, recalling from memory, so at this point I fell back on my seat and relaxed a bit. This didn't seem like much of anything, after all. At best, this was some old lady dressed in black who had rattled the most easily rattled group of people in the world, church-going old people, with her presence. Maybe she was wearing a veil or something. I can see how that would be creepy. Some 20 minutes later, the webpage updated with a picture. It was grainy, low quality, badly lit and what have you, but arguably that only made it more disturbing. Someone with a camera phone had managed to snap a picture of the mysterious stranger in the church. It was no old lady, that's for sure. I distinctly remember feeling something in the pit of my stomach when the image loaded. It was a raggedy, tall, slender figure, almost certainly male, though impossible to be sure. It was completely covered in black fabric. Not like a ghostly sheet, it seemed to have been wrapped, from head to toe, in black, gauze-like rags. It was hard to discern the exact nature of the material from the picture. Wispy little frills trailed behind its feet. It has been caught in motion, prowling with an awkward gait across the halls that surrounded the pews. Its arms ended in tendrils of rags which could not be discerned as hands. The clothing didn't seem functional, much less deliberate. It looked like someone who'd escaped from a hospital burn ward, or a grave. I'm sorry, I keep saying it even though I now know that it was a he. At any rate, I could see why the stranger had caused such alarm. His face was completely invisible. I imagine that holes had been punched into the fabric for breathing and sight, but it was impossible to discern from the image provided. Its posture suggested a hunchback. It was impossible to determine height without something else in the image for comparison, but I would venture to guess he was taller than most. I didn't really know what to do at this point. The unreality of the situation washed over me like a cold sweat. Was anyone in danger? Was my grandma there? Was there any real motive for alarm? I continued to refresh the news page for the next 15 minutes, but there were no updates. I wasn't the only one who was bored at work, though. 1 or 2 user comments were appearing beneath the article. Nothing really notable, Jokes about ghosts or predictions about the biblical apocalypse, etc. At the very least you couldn't say it wasn't attention-grabbing. With nothing else to do, and no intention to get back to work, I texted a friend for her opinion. You don't know her, her identity's not important to this story. I told her to check the Citizen report for the weirdest developing story. She rolled her eyes at me and chastised me for having nothing better to do. But then the texts started rolling in. 3 different friends F. Among them, you can ask him we're following this story online. Do you people have a sixth sense for weird shit that I haven't developed yet? Apparently we were all very bored, and very interested. I started exchanging opinions over the phone until the news site updated again. This is a local news broadcast network. The initials have been changed for anonymity.